Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and welcome to another episode of my favorite box arts within video games, and this one is obviously on the Sega Genesis. So if you've seen the first one that I did, which is on the NES games, well, it's going to be the same rules are going to apply here, so I'm not going to explain all that all over again, but I'll just leave it as, well, let's start talking about some of my favorite box arts on the Sega Genesis. So the first one we have here is Alicia Dragoon. And I'm sure you can tell this is the Japanese cover, and yes, this cover looks pretty fucking awesome. So it has a lot of bright colors, some very nice detail, and just everything just looks very nice together. And the more I look at it, the more I start seeing more things I didn't see before. So yes, I definitely say this is a work of art. Next, we have Battle Master. Now this is a cover that looks like there's a whole bunch of shit going on, but you can still tell what's going on here. Like, you got a knight taking on an entire army of skeleton warriors because, you know, that's just so badass looking. Now unfortunately there's not a whole lot of color here, but I do think it does look fairly nice together, mainly because of all the detail that you see. But it really does have that power metal cover art look to it, which is, you know, an awesome thing in my opinion. So next up we have Biohazard Battle. So you have a ship flying away from a giant sea serpent that has kind of skeleton look, which is pretty awesome looking. And then you have some rocks and tentacles on the bottom floor. And it is a fairly nice looking background that does blend well with the main picture here. But yes, definitely the showstopper here happens to be the skeleton serpent. So next up we have Chakan the Forever Man. Now this is a cover I always liked ever since I first seen it. So yes, the guy on the cover is pretty badass looking. He kind of looks like a mixture between Eddie from Iron Maiden and a wizard. And on top of that, he just has two swords that have some pretty cool details on it, so yeah, he's definitely pretty awesome looking. And while the background may not be anything too special, I do think it does look very nice with everything else, so yeah, it's mainly the main focus here is just the badass fucking Chakan dude. In fact, I haven't played this game in such a long time, but I do remember it being brutally hard. So next up we have Elemental Master, and this is the Japanese cover of it. So you got a spellcaster guy fighting a giant dude shooting each other with like lasers. I mean, that's pretty awesome. And then you see a random fairy around the top, but of course I think one of the main reasons why I really like this one is not just because of the two characters, but also has to do with the fact that there's just so many like different colors going on. Also, the font that they use for the title is actually pretty cool looking. So next up, we have the Japanese version of El Viento, because, well, the English version of this cover is pretty, like, looking. But yes, this one has a lot of crazy detail and some very nice colors blending well together. So there's not a whole lot else I can say, considering it is very simple looking, but it's really just the details that just make it look very nice looking. So next up, we have Galeras. And I have to say, I actually like both the English and the Japanese covers for both, but I just want to talk a little bit about the English one. So in this cover you have the spaceship flying towards you with like some Grim Reaper looking guy trying to grab it. And then you have two other characters that do have a pretty interesting design to them. So yes, there's some pretty cool colors going on here, it's very appealing looking, and of course the one thing I do find funny with it is the whole thing saying 8 meg powerful. I don't know why that amuses me, but whatever. Either way, it's just a really awesome looking cover. So next up we have Game Ground, and yes, when I did a review of this game I did mention that the cover of this game is pretty awesome looking. So you have a whole bunch of shit going on, like you got a bunch of samurais, robots, M. Bison with a chain gun, and Phoenix from X-Men, and even some Death Stars shooting lasers. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of shit going on, and I fucking love it. And next up, we have Ghouls and Ghosts. This is one that is very popular, but I can definitely see why, because it's just so fucking badass looking. So you got Sir Arthur with his gold knight armor, which just looks pretty fucking killer. And then you got a giant badass looking monster in the back. And then you have some trees and rocks, which are pretty detailed for what they are. So yeah, there's not a whole lot that I can say that already hasn't been said before, but yes, I freaking love this cover. I actually like this one even better than the Super Nintendo cover, and even that one is pretty cool looking as well. So next up we have Gunstar Heroes, the Japanese cover. I really like this one mainly because I find that the art style really reminds me of something you'd see in a Mega Man game, and I always think it's great whenever they show a whole bunch of characters on a cover. Even the background is pretty slick looking, so yeah, there's not a whole lot that I can say here, but yeah, it's just pretty awesome looking. I definitely like it better than the English one for sure. So next up we have the Immortal. I really like this cover just because of how simple it is. I mean, all you need is a lightning background and a Grim Reaper, and there you go, that's pretty awesome. It's a perfect way to describe something that's just so badass and hardcore looking, and while this doesn't even lie to you at all because this game is pretty fucking insane. So next we have Landgrisser, and yes, this game did come out in North America, but it was called Warsong, and the cover of that one is pretty cool looking, but I just like the whole anime style much better personally. So you have the main character who has some pretty cool looking armor. And the background is pretty interesting looking. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what it is. It kind of looks like that type of rock that's like black that has like the white lines, or it kind of looks like lightning, or I don't know, it could even be paint for all we know. But I do really like that look to it, and of course it's just very simple looking, and well, I just can't go wrong here. So now we're going to be moving on to Bazan Saga Mutant Fighter. Yeah, this is definitely a pretty big favorite of mine. But it also helps that this game is based after a manga, which is pretty much a combined two of Mazinger and Devilman, which I thought was pretty awesome. So yeah, the main guy here is just fucking awesome looking. And then you got some claw reaching in, and then of course you got some giant skeleton in the background. I mean, it's just pretty simple stuff that just has a lot of detail going on that I just really love a whole bunch. And lastly I'll mention is that I also really like the font of the title. So next up, we have Phantasy Star, this one being the fourth one that I'm going to be talking about here, but I'll just say right now is that the Japanese cover to all the Phantasy Star games are fucking awesome. So you have three of the main characters that do look pretty great, and then you got some big giant boss dude in the background, which is pretty badass looking. And then you got a fortress in the background, and sure it may not have a whole lot of detail to it, but it does blend nicely with the background, oddly enough. So yeah, when it comes to the Japanese covers to any of the Phantasy Star games, they all look pretty fucking great. So next we have Pirate's Gold. So I really like this one just because of all the detail that you see. Like you see all the details on like the pirate, the ship, the water, the background. I think it all looks great together, and of course you just can't go wrong with having a sword fight with a pirate. That's always going to be a great thing. So while it is a pretty simple pirate cover, I think it's really the details that I really like about it so much. So next up we have Ranger X. Well, I think you guys know this already, but whenever it comes to robots or mechas or anything like that, I always think that's pretty awesome shit. So this one is fairly simple. I mean, you got a giant robot running at you with an explosion in the background, and then you see some fire in the foreground. And of course, I like the mech design here, so I really can't go wrong with this cover. But as an honorable mention, I'll also have to say Musha also has a pretty cool looking cover too, but I just wanted to talk about this one just because, I don't know, I think this one just looks cooler. So next we have Shadow Dancer, the Japanese version. So you got the ninja and the wolf, which all look really cool together. Then of course there's like a lightning storm going on, and of course you also see the Statue of Liberty in the background, because why the fuck not? And the colors do look very nice together. And as I said before many times, is that stuff with ninjas is always fucking awesome. And speaking of ninjas, the next one we have here is Shinobi 3. So Shinobi looks pretty great, and then of course you got like the Shogun in the background with the four arms. He's probably my favorite looking. And then you got a green guy in the back with a flamethrower, which I didn't even notice until now, but yeah, that's actually pretty awesome. So just like the game itself, the cover is also fucking awesome. So next up we have Slaughterhouse 2. So you have the main guy beating up a xenomorph, which is pretty great. Then you got some like octopus guy in the back, and then you got a hungry ghost. And way in the back you see a whole army of zombies, which is actually pretty great. And of course all the colors do look very nice together. Sure, it's kind of weird that the xenomorph is pink, but hey, whatever, it's still pretty great looking. And then next up we have Strider, the Japanese version, because oh god, the English version of this game just looks fucking awful. So Strider's character definitely looks more closer to the game, and then of course you got some pretty cool looking bad guys that are mostly robots. And then you got this one big bad guy who kind of looks like a wizard here, and then he has like a giant like huge claw coming out, which is also pretty awesome. Also, all the colors blend well together, and same thing with the background, so nothing much I can complain about here. So next we have is Undead Line. So the first thing that I'll say here is that I really do like the font that they use, where it looks like a lot of it's like tearing away, and then it also has like a sword in the middle, then with like the D's on fire. I don't know, I think that's all pretty great looking. And then you got a castle of a floating island with like lightning bolts shooting at it, looking like that's very far away and that you have to get there, and that actually makes perfect sense because this game is definitely a fucking hard one. In fact, the cover of this game kind of reminds me of the cover of Brain Lord on Super Nintendo, but only that I find this one just looks a lot better. And lastly, the one that I'm going to be mentioning here that I could find is Valis 1. So, just like my review of the Valis games on the Sega Genesis, I mentioned that this cover was pretty nice looking. because not only do I like the anime style that it has, but also the fact that it kind of looks like an old style book, which, you know, is pretty cool. It's a very simple cover, but it all looks pretty nice together because of how, like, old style it is. Well, if that makes sense to any of you guys out there, but yeah, it makes sense to me. Well, anyways, I just always really like this one quite a lot. So those are all the Sega Genesis or Megadrive games of covers that I really like a whole lot, and I'm sure there are some that I'm missing, and of course I know there's some that I didn't mention in here because, well, they're clearly obvious, you know, can't go wrong from Sonic, right? Well, anyways, so what are some of your favorite box arts on the Sega Genesis or the Megadrive or whatever you want to call it? Although I do find Megadrive sounds better, but the Genesis is still a pretty cool sounding name. Well, either way, you can either post it down in the comments section, or you can feel free to do a video response, whatever the case is. There's quite a lot of really nice box arts on the Genesis or Mega Drive, and so therefore, next episode, we're going to be taking a look at its rival, which is the Super Nintendo. So with that being said, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.